uh, about Big Pharma wanting people to be on antidepressants despite its ineffectiveness. So the article goes as this, and this is an article from Counterpunch that was from 4 years ago. Big Pharma wants people on antidepressants for years and it's working, by Martha Rosenberg. Antidepressants was once considered a short term therapy to help people get over a troubled time. All that changed with the debut of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, antidepressant drug ads on TV, and the promotion of the chemical imbalance theory of depression. Though there is almost no evidence of the theory that SSRI antidepressants um, correctly def- corrects deficits in brain levels of serotonin, a neurotransmitter, antidepressants became blockbusters for pharma. By the mid 1990s, drug makers have convinced the government regulators that when taking long term, the medication sharply reduces the risk of relapse in people with chronic recurrent depression, says the New York Times. So to paraphrase this, um, there was no such thing as the chemical imbalance theory of depression, which would explain why antidepressants or why Big Pharma needed to provide antidepressants and having the FDA approve of it. And they said the reason why that they did that was to fix a chemical imbalance um, in the brain. However, there's been no evidence that there's a chemical imbalance within the brain. Oh my goodness, then why are they taking these antidepressants then if that is its main function? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's big business to throw smoke and mirrors, and as long as you can be convincing that this is needed, then it will be granted. And what that's what Big Pharma was able to do. You know, Big Pharma already has a hand in the government's pocket, considering the fact that they're the ones that provide the drugs. So they can provide anything, even if it doesn't work. But as long as they can convince you, as long as they have the poker face and can tell you straight to your face that it works even though it doesn't, then that's how they can get it passed and be able to make a profit off of it. Amazing. Big Pharma looking out for the people. Thanks to drug advertising and the unproven serotonin theory, the use of antidepressants have almost tripled. Only 13.4 million Americans took antidepressants in 1999 to 2000, ballooning to 34.4 million in 2013 to 2014. That is amazing. I mean, that's more. That's more than, or that's close to twice the amount. In 2015, 1 in 4 U.S. women were on psychiatric drugs, usually antidepressants. More concerning, long-term use of antidepressants have doubled since 2010 and has tripled since 2000, so that 15.5 million Americans have been taking the medication for at least 5 years. Yet few studies show the safety or efficiency antidepressant use long term. I have frequently reported on the side effects of SSRIs, from birth defects associated with Paxil, including heart malformations, to sexual dysfunction and weight gain. The pills are also linked to serotonin syndrome when taken with migraine drugs, and GI bleeding when taken with aspirin. And if you're not familiar with serotonin syndrome, it's a true it's a true imbalance when it comes to other organs of your body. That's when that is when the person or the patient can suffer from hyperthermia, anxiety. Their vital signs will be labeled. Usually the blood pressure is elevated, heart rate is elevated. At this point, they're having a medical emergency. So they would have to seek emergency care. And again, this is what big pharma does. All right, if the evidence is out there that it doesn't fix the very thing that it's supposed to fix, and yet they're still allowing people, and yet they still were able to convince the government to approve it so that they could be able to sell it to the people. Big pharma is all about big profits. It's all about big profits. One especially concerning side effect of SSRI is bone thinning and osteoporosis. Fracture events linked to SSRI, especially from long-term use, has barely been researched or explored and are often dismissed by older patients as mere aging. The wide use of SSRI in the U.S. population does not just have health implications. It has political implications too. All right, pay attention. By selling depression and its cure, pharma siphons often off legitimate activists' anger at a government system that keeps people poor, powerless, locked out of opportunity, and saddled with debt. If they are unhappy, they have a personal problem, says pharma. Treat it with a pill, not a political problem. Pay attention. Very, very, very important. Labeling bad and sad moods. Depression also transmits an unrealistic idea that people should be more than happy all the time, and if they are not, they are mentally ill. Gone are the days when bad moods were attributed to problems with finance, romance, debt, jobs, housing, career, family, marriage, and health. Plain and simple. They want to sell it to you that if you're sad, take a pill. All right? When truth be told, people that are normally sad just need to just deal with life. And there's not a single pill that can help you deal with life. But Big Pharma wants to sell it to you as, no, you're sad. You need to take a pill. All right? Or you're angry. You need to take a pill. Because pills cure all. America has gone from being a country that used to depend on its own to a country that depends on pills. In April, the New York Times reported something the drug safety community has warned about for years. Antidepressants can be very difficult to quit. Ooh, maybe that's one of the reasons why Big Pharma wants them on antidepressants, because they know that people can't get off of it. And they knew that people wouldn't be able to get off of it. Because remember, once the people are able to quit the drug, then that's when the residual income quits for Big Pharma. And Big Pharma needs the people in order to stay rich. But they can't do that if they're not taking the very antidepressants that Big Pharma has paid off doctors to help provide for these very patients. In fact, the withdrawal from them, which pharma calls a discontinuation syndrome, is similar to that of addictive drugs. Ooh. So big pharma really is no different from a street pharmacist. As a matter of fact, big pharma, they are responsible for the vast addiction that's happening in our country. Many patients are miffed that they are not warned by their doctors that they may be quote unquote parked on the drugs indefinitely, says the Times, thanks to the side effects of dizziness, nausea, headache, and brain zaps, which do not go away quickly when trying to stop the drugs. I mean, imagine having this all the time and you not getting rid of it, and knowing that the only way you can get rid of it is to depend on a chemical to do so. Amazing. Brian, a 29-year-old Chicagoan she interviewed who did not want his name used, told her he has remained on SSRI antidepressants for years despite his wish to quit. Every time I try to stop, I get something that feels like an electric current in my head and I can't do it, he says. The article drew a huge backlash from psychiatrists from pharma-funded medical schools. By amplifying the social media echo chamber, the article creates the unfortunate impression that most patients are forced to continue antidepressants out of fear of withdrawal rather than out of prevention of recurrence, wrote 39 psychiatrists, terming depression chronic and undertreated. Now, you know these 39 psychiatrists were bought off. They are the official mouthpiece of Big Pharma. All you have to do is look at the very compensation that these doctors get for supporting Big Pharma. And by them doing that, the doctors no longer take a medical position on the patient's health. They are taking a political position that pays them very, very, very well. So these doctors are really not considered medical professionals. They're really considered more of political professions that are the official mouthpiece of Big Pharma, that are endorsing them to speak this untrue rhetoric. At least 35 of the letter signers, who want to see more, not less, SSRIs are affiliated with Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons, which receive, guess what? Ding, ding, ding. Go figure, surprise. $200 million, $250 million from former Merck CEO Roy Vagelos and his wife Deanna last year. Ding, 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 ding. Come on, the doctors have to accept the doctors have to put out the very thing that the donors want them to put out, considering the fact that they are being well compensated by these donors. You see, the medical profession is no different from the political profession. When you get bought out to to speak a specific rhetoric, at this point, you're not representing the people. You're representing the donors. And these donors are being compensating these doctors very well. So why would a doctor then step back and pretend as if he should do his job, especially when he's getting paid not to do so? These doctors are no different from the politicians that you see in Washington. All right, but they're bought off. They are the part of the swamp that needs to be drained. There was a similar pharma-funded backlash in 2004 when the FDA added a black box warning label to SSRIs that said that they are linked to suicides, especially in young people, threatening drug sales. So they actually do the complete opposite of what they are actually meant to do. The concerns about antidepressant use in children and adolescents have paradoxically resulted in a reduction in their use. And this has contributed to increased suicide rates. Says Charles Nemeroff, who happens to have links to Eli Lilly, Pfizer, Wyeth Ayres, Pharmacia Upjohn, and 5 other drug makers. Black box warning creates a barrier to treatment by scaring young people and parents away from care, says Mental Health America. Keep in mind, all of these people are being bought off by Big Pharma. They always say money talks and bullshit walks. Well, in this case, the money is talking and the bullshit keeps talking. And as a matter of fact, that's the term I'm going to put out, especially for this story. Money talks, and so does bullshit. Because the more money talks, the more bullshit you're going to hear. Reported to have accepted $3.8 million from pharmaceutical companies in 2005, the year after the black box warning. You see, all you need to know, I mean, if you really want to know a true person's stance, all you have to do is follow the money. All right? Follow the paper trail, and you'll get all the answers that you need. If you really want to know a person's true intention, just follow the money. All right? If you really want to know where these doctors stand, ask them who their donor is. Ask them where they're being compensated to make a statement on their behalf, or just ask who their donors are. These doctors are no different from politicians. Doctors promoting SSRI in medical articles have also been outed as taking money from pharma. Woo! And you wonder why they're such advocates for drugs, right? Because they're being paid hefty to do so. Dr. Author, who has defended the use, Dr. Author, hold on, who had defended the use of antidepressants during pregnancy in a 2006 Journal of the American Medical Association article, has ties to antidepressant manufacturers. Talk about conflict of interest. So if you know that these very authors that are supposed to be scholars, that are writing in a that are writing in an academic magazine that is reviewed by peers, and you find out that they have been bought out by the pharmaceutical company, would you believe one single word that comes out of their mouth? Why would you believe anything from the Journal of the American Medical Association? They really should just call themselves the Journal of the American Medical Association, that is endorsed by Big Pharma. Because that's what they are. A complete irrelevant article made up of scholars that are bought off by pharmaceutical donors. Big Pharma. Lee Cohen, lead author of the antidepressant study, declares in a follow-up letter to JAMA that, quote, "We did not view these associations as relevant to this study," and listed 76 other relationships the 9 physician authors had with pharma. 76. Amazing. That's amazing. 3 years later, another JAMA author was found to have undisclosed financial links to SSRI makers. Robert Robertson, who wrote about the drug Lexapro, has failed to report lecture fees he received from the manufacturer. I'm telling you. This is something that that keeps these type of things from circulating. You know what I mean? They claim to say that money is the root of all evil, but money is a piece of paper. If man can make it, man can break it. It's not the money, it's the way people respond to it. Because if these people are willing to worship money as opposed to worshiping God, then these are the very things that you're going to have. A bunch of experts, a bunch of medical experts that are telling you what you should take, that are telling you what you should do with your body. And it's a shame too, considering that they're doctors, and people trust doctors to give them sound advice as of how they should maintain health among themselves. And yet you have doctors that are being paid off to tell you to take something that could be counterproductive to your health. Amazing. It's just amazing. Martin Keller, former professor of psychiatry at Brown and lead author of a now discredited Paxil study, admitted that GSK has given him tens of thousands of dollars during and after the study. That's amazing. And this is how big pharma are able to get their products out, because if they're able to pay off a credible source, which is anybody with a dumb medical degree, if they can buy them off to pay off a bunch of medical experts who are in charge of prescribing and providing medications, then it's easy for Big Pharma to manipulate them and tell them to mislead the public, all right, all for the exchange of profits. And Big Pharma is big money, huge money. They make billions of dollars every quarter on drugs, all right? They make billions of dollars every quarter. Every quarter. That's every 3 months. That is amazing. And this is the reason why they can be able to then pay off credible people to give you a lie. And they're all part of it. They're all part of the drug cartel. It's Big Pharma. It's the representatives. It's the doctors. And then it's the organizations that support such a cause. It's amazing. The medical cartel. It's amazing. Finally, with as much as a quarter of the population on SSRI in some areas, there's an underreported concern about drugs in waterways and even drinking systems. So listen, even if you're not taking drugs, you're still taking drugs, because it's ending up in our environment. The very thing that is counterproductive in people's health is now affecting people as a whole. A few years ago, the Southern Daily Echo News reported that fish were under the influence of Prozac and 5 times more likely to swim towards the light than away from it, making them also susceptible to predators. So it's one after another. You know what I mean? You know, think about the very fish that think about the very fish that we can get in the market that has been laced with Prozac, and we wind up consuming that, and then we wind up consuming that drug. I'll tell you. Shrimp are also to be believed to be at risk. Crustaceans are crucial to the food chain, and the shrimp natural behavior is being changed because of antidepressant levels in the sea. This could seriously upset the natural balance of the ecosystem, says Dr. Alex Ford from the University of Portsmouth Institute of Marine Sciences. Could those of us who do not want to take psychiatric drugs be unwillingly receiving SSRI anyway? Perhaps in drinking water? There's no doubt about it. Pharmaceuticals are being detected in the environment, and that is a genuine concern that these compounds in small concentrations that they're at can cause impacts to human health and to the aquatic organisms, says Mary Busby, Director of Environmental Technology for Merck. Clearly, pharma SSRI marketing spree, which has millions of people on SSRI for decades, does not just threaten patients. I'm telling you right now, this goes to show you how evil Big Pharma is. Not in the sense that they are in business, but the fact that they are in business to provide substances to humans that can be that are unnecessary for humans. I mean, Big Pharma knows what they're doing. They look at human beings as a profit and not people, and they're looking to how they can be able to maximize the most amount, how they can be able to maximize profits on the very people that they're supposed to serve. It's just it's amazing how even though they are in the business of profits, how they can be able to use people as props for profit. I want you guys to take this into consideration and just understand what Big Pharma is doing and what they're all about. All right? They wouldn't give this to their children, but they'll give it to any stranger out on the streets or in hospitals, and they'll get doctors to make sure that these drugs get out. But the bigger question that we need to ask is, when did we ever become a nation of pills? Why is this, why is the Western Hemisphere so invested in pharmaceutical solutions as opposed to natural solutions? But that's what happens when you are a part of a specific world that doesn't believe in religion, but believes in the world. Amazing.
Tonight, Sinaloa is a province in northwest Mexico. It's directly across from the bottom of Baja California. It's not that far from the United States, and that's a bad thing because Sinaloa, Mexico may now be the single largest producer and distributor of the synthetic opioid fentanyl. Cartels are making fentanyl in mass quantities in Sinaloa now, but they're not making it for domestic consumption within Mexico. They're making it to export here, and you can see why. In the capital of Sinaloa, 11 pounds of fentanyl typically sells for around $15,000. In the United States, that same amount of fentanyl sells for more than $100,000. So you can see the incentive. How much fentanyl is that? Well, just 2 milligrams of the drug can be lethal to a human being. That means 11 pounds contains nearly 2.5 million fatal doses of fentanyl. Again, there's a major financial incentive for the drug cartels, which run huge parts of Mexico, to produce this drug and ship it north. And they are. If cocaine was the drug of the 1980s, we are now living in the fentanyl era, and the numbers show it. Not so long ago, between October 2012 and October 2013, Customs and Border Protection seized just 2 pounds of fentanyl total at our southern border. Compare that to what we're seeing now. In the first 8 months of this year, first 8 months, the U.S. government seized more than 7,200 pounds of fentanyl. That's the highest amount seized by far. And keep in mind, that's likely just a small percentage of the fentanyl that came over the border, since it is odorless and difficult to detect. According to a recent report by the U.S. Sentencing Commission, quote, since fiscal year 2015, the number of fentanyl offenders reported to the commission more than doubled each fiscal year, resulting in a 3,592% increase. Meanwhile, federal authorities recently announced that they have seized nearly 10 million counterfeit pills, and many of them were laced with fentanyl. That was all in a single year. News reports from Chicago say, as they do in so many cities, fentanyl has become an epidemic.
The pill on the left is Xanax. The one on the right is counterfeit. Not knowing the difference can be deadly. The Drug Enforcement Administration warns of a dramatic increase in fake prescription pills flooding the market from criminal drug networks in Mexico. The drugs made to look like Oxy or Adderall are laced with fentanyl or meth, often in deadly doses. The DEA has seized more than 9.5 million counterfeit pills so far this year, and the head of the Chicago division says they've seized more than 600 pounds of fentanyl.
So why are we telling you all this about fentanyl? because the rise in the consumption of fentanyl mirrors the rise in the availability of fentanyl, which is causing the massive rise in deaths by fentanyl OD. And all of that is a result of the Biden administration's immigration policy. When you open the borders, it's not just people who comes in, it's massive amounts of fentanyl. And other illegal drugs. So the Biden administration tells you that their border policy is, quote, humane, but it's just the opposite. That policy has resulted in this country becoming flooded with fentanyl, and it's resulted in the deaths of many thousands of Americans. The latest data from the CDC shows that drug overdose deaths in the United States hit a new high, almost 100,000 deaths of American citizens during the 12-month period that ended in March of this year. How much more is that from last year? Well, it's a 30% increase in 1 year. So there are a lot of reasons this is happening, but one of the main reasons is government policy, which has made the population sedentary and depressed. Our government spent the last year, in case you haven't noticed, locking everyone inside their homes. And the result of that is that drugs are everywhere and major American cities are now unrecognizable. Take a look at this report from San Francisco's local news station. Watch.
The rate of accidental drug overdoses, hospitalizations, and deaths is outpacing the city's expanding teams of crisis intervention specialists. Fentanyl, a powerful and highly addictive synthetic opioid, much cheaper than heroin, entered the San Francisco drug market a few years ago.
Fentanyl has been the large driver for these increases in accidental overdose deaths.
The powerful narcotic was responsible for more than 500 deaths last year and has become the drug of choice for many users in San Francisco. KTVU has been documenting the epidemic for months. Many experts believe that social isolation from the coronavirus may be contributing to the death toll.
So what we refer to habitually as our homeless crisis, which is bigger than it's ever been in American history, is not primarily about homes. It's not even primarily about mental illness, strictly speaking. It's mostly about drugs and drug addiction. None of this should really surprise us. Our leaders have spent the last year dividing Americans from each other. The result is loneliness. They close the churches. They close the gyms. They force people to stay apart from their family, friends, and the people they're closest to. And at the very same moment, the Biden administration has opened the borders, allowing a massive wave of this highly addictive, deadly synthetic opioid to enter this country. So what do you think happened? Well, an awful lot of people died. And this was a result of bad policy. But the Biden administration isn't simply ignoring the problem. They're not apologizing for it, of course. They're doing something even more destructive. They're making it worse. They're making it less possible for the U.S. government to control what comes across our border. You remember they blamed the Border Patrol for daring to patrol the border on horseback. Now they've nominated a genuine radical, an extremist called Chris Magnus, to lead Customs and Border Protection. How extreme is Chris Magnus? Well, during his confirmation hearings in the Congress yesterday, Magnus was asked repeatedly whether what is happening at the border is a crisis, and repeatedly he refused to say that it was. Tens of thousands of Americans are dying because of this border policy. And yet, here's the man who the Biden administration would like to run the border responded. Watch.
Do you believe we have a crisis at the southern border? Yes or no?
Senator, I'm not sure, does it really matter whether we call it a major challenge, a crisis, a big problem?
Do we have a crisis at the border? Yes or no?
Senator, let me assure you that no one believes there is greater urgency to this matter than I do.
Are you saying there's not a crisis at the border?
Senator, I don't think I don't speak to urgent as less serious at all. In fact,
is there a crisis or is there not a crisis at the border?
Senator, I would say that my highest priority is going to...
I didn't ask your priority. I asked to characterize the situation on the border. Is there a crisis at the border?
What I'm certainly trying to convey is how serious I take what's happening at the border and the amount of work that I want to put into addressing it.
So here's a guy who's totally beholden to the radical nonprofits, the NGOs, many funded by George Soros, that control our immigration policy. He's so beholden to them that he can't tell an obvious truth under oath for fear of offending them. They're his real constituency, not you or anyone else who lives in this country. It's the radical NGOs that would like to open the border, knowing full well that doing so will result in the deaths of many thousands of Americans from the drugs that are also coming across the border. But our leadership class is so decadent that they don't even acknowledge that drug use is a problem or a crisis, as Chris Magnus refused to say. They think it's fine. So Chris Magnus says he's going to take the border very seriously. As you well know, that he is going to do his level best to allow as many foreign nationals to come here as possible, and many will be bringing drugs. So this is more than just irresponsible. It's more than just ideological. It is reckless, it is dangerous, it is criminal. The role of the federal government is not to protect economic migrants from Haiti. It is not to improve the living standards in other countries. It is not to pack the electorate on behalf of a specific political party. It has only one role, and one role alone. It is to protect American citizens. It is to serve their interests. But they're not doing that. They're doing exactly the opposite.
You